Hey everyone, welcome to SecTalks Melbourne, March 2020. So a bit of a different format today. Obviously, we've got quite a bunch of us should be working from home, hopefully, and various events all around the world. Hey, North, how's it going? Good to see you, man. I hope isolation is treating you well. So as I said, bit of a different stream format, just due to the not having an office. We're going to go through the slides. Obviously, some of them are no longer relevant, but we'll see how it goes. So we'll just go, thanks to our sponsors. Things are a bit different. Obviously, there's no food and drinks, but yep. We got infrastructure prizes, bar tab from Privasec. Still got some prizes from CyberSec people, so thanks heaps for that. Really appreciate it. And CyberGym. So I'm sure you guys had a really awesome time doing the hacking and stuff at CyberGym in Melbourne last month. I heard good things about it. Was gutted I couldn't get there myself. Unfortunately, it's too much going on for me at the time. If you've got any feedback on this format or even the last couple of events, feel free to jump on this link and share with us so we can improve and everything like that. What's coming up? Obviously, there's been a crazy couple of things happening, around the world with this COVID-19. So all of the meetups and conferences, we have yet to hear from everyone, but most conferences have pulled the pin. So I guess we'll see over the next few weeks what happens, right? So alternatively, there's a few streams that are happening, which, some good value stuff and learnings there. So feel free to head over to those guys and check out what they're doing. So this month we've got a couple of speakers. We're going to start with FML. So he's got 6 months worth of Honeypot traffic in 20 minutes, so it should be pretty interesting. Hopefully there's lots of attacks that he can demonstrate, or at least show us attempts and this sort of thing. And then we're going to have Kelso, why JavaScript is more bad. We had a quick run through of that last night. It was pretty interesting, so could be a couple of learnings in there for the pen testers among us. We got some prizes this month for the most funny person to say something in the chat. I don't know, we'll see. That can be the CTF for the night. Nothing that's too off limits, I don't think. Links and resources. So head along to these. We've got a Slack. So if you want to jump on that, there's lots of like-minded individuals that turn up most months. And the email and things like that. Thanks all. Don't know if there's any more slides. If you want to switch over to FML.
Is everything working? I'm going to assume, yeah. Okay. Hey, I'm FML. I'm from Melbourne. I'm a student at the moment. So student, want to be pen tester, play CTFs quite a bit. At the moment, I'm focusing on low-level things, learning x86. Probably seen me around, look at cons and meetups and stuff. If I do look over there, I've got everything running, so just ignore me. I did this project as part of Privasec's Accelerator program. So if you don't know what that was, it was made for students to sort of build the gap between industry and uni. So that's where this all got started with. And I was also in charge of running the Hack the Box stuff for Melbourne last year. If you're interested in that, I don't know if it's coming back. You'll have to talk to them. I haven't heard anything, so stay tuned. Honeypots 101. I'm assuming most people know what they are. Basically, if you don't, it's just a box on a network that is used to sort of attract traffic and to let people in under false pretense. It's mainly intended to catch hackers, but as we'll see, and as a lot of people know, it's all just botnets and, you know, Russians and stuff trying to get free stuff. So if you want to set one of these up, I reckon VPS is the best way to go. I used DigitalOcean with a referral code, so it cost me next to nothing to run. Set up a Unix OS, install a Honeypot. I think the one I used was called Cowrie or something. It runs in a Python virtual environment, so the risk of actually getting owned is slightly low. And then you just wait around. So I came up with this sort of equation, which is how mine ran at least. And yeah, it cost me about $50 for 6 months use. And I got, you know, a 45,000 word password list and a couple of hours of watching people flail around in a box that they didn't know was fake. So then there's like the traffic that you get out of it. So obviously you have a honeypot and that's going to make logs every day or hour or whatever. So I recommend throwing that into a separate machine or running a Splunk or an Elk instance alongside it on the same VPS. It'll help to streamline everything. A lot of honeypots as well have a forwarding feature, which helps just send all the logs straight into Splunk or Elk. So you can search through it, sift through it, learn, you know, how to index data. And if you're like me, you're going to get really confused when everything comes in because you're not going to understand most of it. Locally, you can set up something. I had a VM that I was using for dissecting pieces of malware which were getting dropped in. If you don't want to do this, there's heaps of tools online. Any run is a good one. I know Open Analysis Live just came out with a new unpacking thing online, which works really well. But you know, you're going to be running malware inside your network. At least I was. So, you know, be smart about it. Disconnect your VM. You know, don't be an idiot, basically. There's some extras you can get as well. So I didn't use this one, but Tango for Splunk sort of just is built for honeypot traffic. So if you have a forwarder connected to your honeypot into Splunk straight away, this will clean everything up for you and it'll stop you having to sift through data yourself and writing, you know, indexes and stuff like that. And it's built, you know, specifically for this. So everything works properly. One add-on I did use was the security trails one, which sort of just helps identify C2s and stuff which have already been indexed by other people. So you know where your traffic's coming from, stuff like that. And then if you were at CyberGym in Melbourne a couple of weeks back and you saw their honeypot setup, they had sort of an interactive map which looks similar to this tool here. It's not a standard honeypot. I haven't played around with it too much, but you do get a nice live sort of geographic map that shows where all your supposed attacks are coming from. Thought it was pretty good. So that's built by some guy I found on Reddit. Supposedly it holds up as good as the other ones, but worth a try. So I ran this box for 6 months. You know, nothing too eventful happened. I didn't get popped. I don't think box didn't go down. You know, it was all good. But what did happen was a lot of cryptocurrency mining botnets. They love this. I was running it in DigitalOcean's IP range, so I expected this to happen fairly quickly, but it was within an hour of the box getting set up by DigitalOcean that I saw these coming in through the logs. This particular blob that you're seeing here is just that's what comes in on the log. So that you can tell it's base 64, they're decoding it and they're piping it straight into bash, they're wanting it to execute. This specific sample was tied to a Chinese mining botnet. Basically tries to log in as root in through SSH, drops the payload, tries to just mine some Monero when you're not watching, and it hit a lot. There was a lot of this floating around. So if you deconstruct the base 64, you'll get this sort of thing. there's a link at the bottom if you're interested. I tried to check it before we went live, and it looks like it's gone down, but it should be on archive.org, and it's just a good write-up of someone who actually went through each step, figured out how it's getting code execution properly and how it's mining itself into your box. So the other thing that hit, I'd say the second amount would be the DDoS tools that just kept landing. And they happen all the time. So these servers are getting set up to drop files in, and they're gone within a couple of days because people are just either shutting them down or running them off free services or whatever. But they're actually quite hard to get the samples off. So the best way is to just get them out of your logs if they're getting actually downloaded. And I'd get hit by at least once a month with these sort of things. So I got a couple, threw them into VirusTotal. If you could be bothered to type that link at the bottom, you'd find the same sample. And it's classed as this XOR DDoS thing that's it's been floating around for years, but they're still using it. It's still, I guess, getting them what they want. So they'll keep doing it. The second, I'd say, sample of the botnet DDoS tool, whatever you want to call it, is this Japanese one that's been around since 2002. What was interested in this is this was linked to the whole Linux Mint era thing that happened back in 2016, where basically the Mint distro site got owned and they replaced it with backdoor distros of Mint with their own botnet tools in them. So if you downloaded Mint in 2016, there's a likely chance that you got a backdoor version that was targeting the IoT devices and through all that phase. And if you want to figure out how you've got this, if you just strings a lot of files, you're going to find all these weird Japanese sort of strings that basically translate to "I did nothing wrong," which is really weird. But yeah, it gives it away immediately if you just strings the file. So it doesn't take a forensics genius. So this being a honeypot, obviously a lot of files weren't actually getting downloaded because they can't send requests that would finish out from the box. It's not a proxy. It's just the traffic's not going anywhere. So I would get a lot of these sort of requests, which is can you go and get this file? So these things got more and more complicated. This specific example you're seeing was hit quite a lot. The payloads and the files were changing. But, this is what they're sort of sending out. One thing that was really interesting is I got hit with one of these while I was reading the logs one day, and I noticed that the person who sent it automatically logged into my box after it didn't work and tried sending them one at a time until they, see if it would get each one. So they try wget or they try FTP, whatever. And as soon as that didn't work, he automatically tried to RMR off my box and then started sending me swear words through my logs. So if you're into stuff like that, I highly guarantee it will happen again because there's a lot of angry people out on the internet. But as far as where the files are coming from, most of these are behind sort of reverse proxies. If you do a VirusTotal lookup of DuckDNS, you're going to find a lot of files that are almost exactly the same. And there were some that were subdomain takeovers, which are just used to hold malware like this. So what do you learn? If you're if you're doing this stuff as your job, you should probably think about the way you're doing it. It's obviously not working, so you should try a bit harder. But also, if you're running random internet services, you should probably up your protection because people will, as they have been, they'll use your box to host whatever they want. If it's going to make them money or it's going to take down whatever they want, you should take a bit of care, I reckon. And some of the things that I found were idle sites. So people have set something up, they're still paying for it, obviously, but they haven't maintained it. It's full of malware because someone's found a bug and they've uploaded everything just so that they can get a jump box to what they want. So the images at the bottom are me just going through my logs and figuring out where the files are coming from and if I could download them to take them apart. And obviously a lot of them are just dead, so expect that. The ones that I could get I basically just wgetted recursively on the domain to see what I could find. Wget's actually really good for that because it pulls down a bunch of files. In this case, when they were using wget in the first place to request the file name that they were requesting and the file name on the server were completely different. So whether that's their error or scripting or just it's an old sort of echo of traffic on the internet, I don't know. But you can see like they've prepped tools and like malware for every architecture that they expect to see. So it's interesting. You get to sort of see what they're doing, but you know, you never really know what they are unless you take it apart. So I took one of these, and yeah, it's not exactly sophisticated. So I got really excited one night. I was digging through IDA and like thinking, yeah, I can take this apart. Finally learn some things. But then you just run strings and you run it through Firefox and a search engine, and it leads to pastebin because some idiot leaked the source. So yeah, you don't really need sophisticated tools to take this stuff apart. You can just look through forums and stuff like that. This one, I think the source is still up if you want to go take a look. It's just some like basic Flutter thing. What's really interesting is in the source, he's commented that says like, don't leak this. And then someone who's posted it to pastebin has put their name in it to say that they've leaked it because it's like, you want credit for it or something. I don't know. But yeah, when they put this on your system, they really want this to run. For whatever motive they have, they're going to try everything. So this might be a bit small, but they're basically removing or replacing every like normal utility on your system with theirs just to try and get it to run in some way. So yeah, if you want to play around with these, some sandboxes like hybrid analysis and any.run are good to test them in. A lot of people already have, so you can just rerun the test and see what they do. Most of the C2s that they call out to are dead. Whether that's just like the bots are still sending the files out or what, you can't really control that the C2 is getting taken down or dying or whatever. So the other thing that happened was the Russians indexed my Honeypot as a pure goal to sell it as a proxy. So 7 IPs I managed to trace to a site that was selling proxy lists and like indexing tools. And they were sending about 8K requests per day to see if my box was alive and if it was willing to accept traffic. I wasn't able to find my IP in a proxy list, so I'm guessing it was either private or they were still getting around to adding it. I didn't really look into that much. I have the domains if you want to poke at their website because they poked at mine. I'm free to give them out. And there's loads of just like sketchy proxy sites that'll just like get a proxy list off the internet and try and sell it on. So that's a big thing that's happening still. So when you look at the logs in something like Splunk, some of this traffic stands out because it's just 404s. Like you're not getting anywhere. The requests aren't actually going through. You're just seeing it as it's getting sent to you. It's not going anywhere. So one of the main things that was happening was a lot of requests to, sites that may be linked to credit fraud or referral fraud or like online shopping, stuff like that. And a lot of the sites are running this Russian thing that you're seeing a screenshot of, which is basically an ad campaign that's running on a free service So when the first free service dies, it takes another day for the box that it's running on to die. So I basically watched that happen one week. Some guy just trying to get onto his ad campaign that he was running, trying to make some money. The free service died, and then within 24 hours, another one popped up. Same design, same everything. And yeah, a lot of these are running behind reverse proxies like DuckDNS or Pony Telecom was another one that I hadn't heard of, but it's apparently really big for this stuff. Another one that was big as far as the proxy traffic goes is this video.weaver thing. And it took me a while to figure out what this was, but some DNS searches just brings it back to Twitch. A lot of this is happening as well. They're just using it to boost views. for whatever they want. Some to YouTube as well, but I think it's more to Twitch at the moment. I can't explain why, but you know, phishing campaigns and stuff is bringing up, like this one. So this one was the first one that I saw. It was based around RuneScape. I'm pretty sure these are still happening. So basically, you know, they bot one guy and say that he's leaving, he's never coming back, and there's a link to say why, and you go and you log in and everything gets stolen. But then also they're botting the stream to tell you that there's fake streams that are going to steal your account. So everyone is botting, basically. And recently one sprung up to go after Counter-Strike players. So people might have seen that one. Basically like a bunch of ex-pros who no longer play the game or have anything to do with it suddenly started restreaming and explaining why they're never coming back with some links in the description. But basically, yeah, if you click these links, like you're going to get your account jacked pretty quickly as well. If you're wondering why, basically in November last year, someone botted RuneScape and they made roughly $50,000 in a day. So, you know, there's still a lot of money to be made from this, regardless of what you think. But yeah, they want to make money, they're going to do it any way they can. So that's where your account's going, basically. So I've got a lot of proxy traffic. So if you want to run a proxy site, maybe you should figure out if you've actually got valid proxies. It's not hard to figure out if the box is actually letting traffic through, but it shows a lot about how they're detecting this. They're just, you know, getting your IP, sending some traffic, and that's it. They don't really care. They just want to make some money off of it. So yeah, if you want to do something illegal, you may as well figure out if it works first. And yeah, if you are doing something illegal, you might as well do it properly and, you know, hide yourself, because it took me about an hour to figure out who these admins that were running one of these sites was. Basically, they'd linked multiple domains to the same IP, and the whois wasn't paid for like properly, so their full name was on there. So you could pivot from the whois domain to find the second IP, which was like some hobby page that the guide set up. Both of these pages have VK, which is like Russian Facebook accounts, and the two names that are on both are both admins with, you know, personal details. A couple of months ago, one of the guys didn't have his private profile set, and he basically listed every single personal detail about himself. So I knew like where this guy worked, his wife's name, his kid's name, where he lives, where he went to uni, where he served in the army. I know everything. So, you know, be smart if you're gonna go out and do stuff on the internet. Basically, it's not hard. So colorful graphs, you know, there's no point running Splunk if you're not going to make something out of it. So I wanted to correlate where in the world all this traffic was coming from. You know, it was fairly interesting to see your box getting hit every single day from a different IP range, obviously different places. But Ireland was the country that sent the most traffic out to hit the box that I was using. I don't exactly know why this is. It could be just a big VPN operation or something happening out of there. But yeah, it's interesting because it might have shifted. I made this graph a couple of months ago. The data might have shifted by now. If you want to do it again, you know, it's interesting to see which countries are being used or hosting boxes that people are running operations from. So here's just a small list of the other kinds of sites people are requesting through the proxy that doesn't really exist. So Yandex, yeah, you know, that's what we thought. Match.com, sort of, I thought when I first saw it that it was like some lonely guy, you know, trying to get onto his account to meet some people, but in reality, it's probably just some romance scam that this guy's running, which is very popular. And a lot of the sort of what are my IP sites are actually C2s if you look hard enough. This screenshot at the bottom is from one of them, which is just like indexing my IP when I look at it. So, you know, it's not just a what is my IP. It's like someone's actually writing this stuff down and like they're going to hit your IP later with it. And as I mentioned before, like a lot of dead domains, these things just don't exist, but shells will keep pulling out if they can, sort of thing. Some raw statistics, because I'm there to, speed up a bit. I'm not going to list all of these, but there was a lot, roughly 4.5 thousand requests a day, give or take a bit, because I had some errors. And, some things when you run a VPS aren't always in your hands. So I ran into some technical errors, mostly not on my end. It wasn't my fault that DigitalOcean had some maintenance and forced the Honeypot service to stop and not restart. Expect this to happen. I didn't have good logging set up on my end to detect if this was going to happen. So maybe if you're going to do this, it might be a good idea to do something better than what I did. And yeah, pay your bill, because I just got done dealing with harassments from DigitalOcean about, unpaid bills. So yeah. So what's next? Recently, this has sort of been put on the back burner, but something I want to look at is whether or not it's possible to allow traffic to proxy through a box, but sort of just strip out passwords and IPs that they're using. If you remember, there's a talk on YouTube. I highly recommend watching if you haven't seen it, about owning some bad guys with some JavaScript this guy made to just, he took over C2s just because people were using his proxy that was infected. Good talk, check it out. I want to do the same thing, but with SSH, basically. And if you're thinking about doing this, if you're a student, I'd say go for it. You do learn a lot about, basic automation and setting a box up on DigitalOcean, and, get some memes out of it, gives you something to do. And yeah, if you get breached, it's a good practice in forensics and, IR stuff. That's all I've got. Any questions, you can come talk to me when you're free to leave your home. I'll be around SecTalks Melbourne and conferences when they come back. If not, hit me up on Slack, Twitter. I have a blog about this stuff. It's still sort of in the making, but if you do prefer to write stuff down and read it back, that's the place to go. And yeah, that's all I've got. So.
Hey all, my name's Kelso. Give me 1 second. Cool. Hi. Tonight I'll be talking about JavaScript prototype pollution, or why JavaScript is more bad. My name's Kelso. I'm now a security consultant. I work for Context Information Security, hence the contexty logos over absolutely everything as far as the slides are concerned. I've worked in IT for far too many years at this particular point, about 15 odd years. I've been working at Context for about 3 years now, doing security. My hobbies include guitar, reading, screaming at computers, and gaming, hence the head crab. Here, mouse, there we go. Today we'll be covering a couple of different things. So first of all, with JavaScript, I need to cover some basics to give you an idea of what exactly we're running into with this. Then we're covering some fun stuff with jQuery that enables JavaScript prototype pollution on mass scale, so to speak. In particular, it's to do with this CVE 2019-11358. And then, depending on the doing it live gods that are out there, we have a POC that should work, and in theory, shows you the worst possible case scenario with this sort of thing. So, prototype pollution. So we're going to abuse the way that JavaScript creates and manages objects. But like I said, we got to start with the basics, which is how you make objects, then how you make functions, then how you make classes, and then we get onto the standard funky JavaScript-y stuff. So what we have here first is we got 3 different variables. The first one is Huey. It's a character string of some sort. Dewey, which is a integer. And then we've got Louis, which, if you've not seen that particular type of thing before, the 2 squiggly brackets, or whatever particular term you want to use for them, is a base object in JavaScript. It's a special or magic. It's also another way of setting it so that you're creating a variable without anything stored in it. So it's currently not an integer, it's not a string, it's not an array or anything along those lines. So you can reassign that variable to something else at a later point, which is useful. You can do the same sort of thing with C or C++, C#, that sort of thing, by setting it as just an empty object as such, and then assign it to something else later on. They're usually using pointers and other such fun things, but we're not getting into pointers with JavaScript. That's another talk that I'm not doing today. Here's how you create a function. So object of hello world is saying, hey, this is the function, and whenever you call hello world with some nice open brackets on it, we're going to print out the words hello world to the log. Just fairly straightforward and fairly easy to do. Then we're going to define ourselves a class. So classes are functions with additional things appended to them. So a class is technically a function, and a function is technically an object. So technically a class is an object. This is important. Bear with me, it does make more sense as we go along. So in this case, we've got a class of my class. The function that you define it with initially is also the constructor. So every time you create a new my class, it calls that constructor. And then we're using this .prototype. This is particular for JavaScript. It's .prototype allows you to add additional functions or objects or variables, other such things to it. So in this case, it's whenever we do, so we create an object of this. If we do make the noise, it returns quack. So an entire example of this is we have a, you know what, let's just tab across to my notes and open the developer console. Great. So we're going to create a class for constructor of the object. So now we have a class called my class. It has a single function in it, that's make the noise. So now we're going to create a object based off that class called Ducky. And then we're going to use this. So if we do console.log the answer, we get back quack, which is obviously the thing that we've set up with that function. Now, underneath all of that, because JavaScript is dynamic, or as I like to call it, special, and that's not special in any of the other particular types of terms you might use it. I'm using it as a language in the sense that I've not run into one that does this. We can overwrite the current function that Ducky is using. So now if we use Ducky.make the noise, we'll do console.log. It now prints out woof. Obviously, the previous one we've got it sitting up here, which is the quack from the answer, is still set as quack. To show that, we're just going to quickly do console.log the answer. That's still quack. So we're not changing what's been printed out or the variable set from that. LibreOffice is that one. Cool. Now, why is this so important? Like I said, we can overwrite things as we're going along in the current context, which is what makes JavaScript such a dynamic language. So as I'm saying with the console and things along those lines, you can do this to various different websites that you have open that you're accessing as you're going along, which is neat. It allows you to potentially change, as a lot of us pen testers do, is enable buttons when they shouldn't be enabled, or disable functionality, or change certain functions and that sort of thing on the website side of things. Because sometimes whilst the post and get requests that we send through later on have extra data sitting in them, the JavaScript changes may change some of the encoding, the decoding, encryption, that sort of thing with it. So if we can stuff with that before it tries to do that, we might be able to change the way things work. So now we're on to JavaScript magic functions. Today, we'll be focusing on one of them, but there's 2 that I need to point out. One is constructor, which is that first one, which is that function that we used to define a class. And the second one is underscore underscore proto underscore underscore. Proto returns a reference to the class used to create the original object. It also retains access to the original class. For those playing at home, that's, yeah. Okay, so we're going to, once again, we're going to show a bit of JavaScript. So we're going to create ourselves a brand new iPhone. We define this as an iPhone because we're giving it some Face ID and some video, and it returns that it has these particular functions. Now, we've got a brand new guy starting at the company, so we're going to give him a new iPhone. So we create an iPhone called New iPhone, and we check to see if it's got Face ID. Once again, we're going to go across to our developer tools, and yeah. So let's create our iPhone. Oh, create an iPhone, and let's create a new phone off that, and check to see that it has Face ID. Ah, it has. See, it has. I has. Now, because we're pen testers, we need to test all of these particular things. We need to make sure that iPhone can't do anything dodgy. So we're creating a test phone off that. And lo and behold, we're going to decide to use this underscore underscore proto underscore underscore magical function to find a new function called explode. It returns iBoom. Now, in theory, if this was a, we'll call it a sane language, this shouldn't affect anything other than test phone. So if we did test phone dot explode in this case, it returns iBoom. However, because we've modified the original object, bearing in mind this is the thing that we defined before test phone, it also returns the explosion. Because what we've done is we haven't modified test phone with this underscore underscore proto underscore underscore object variable magic thing inside JavaScript. We've modified every reference to iPhone. So every single iPhone that currently exists on the market now has a function called explode with it. And anyone can call that. So we jump back to here. So cool. We've now learned that we can modify any other function in the context of a situation, which is neat. Now let's get into this CVE that we were mentioning before, which is the 2019-11358. What is it in particular relates to jQuery. In particular, jQuery 3.3 and earlier. They come with a built-in function in jQuery called extend, or extends, depending on your variant. It allows you to add or modify properties of any object by stuffing around with some JSON. This includes protected objects. So that base object I was mentioning before with the two squiggly brackets, it's technically protected under JavaScript. So if I tried to go into the console again and tried modifying the squiggly bracket object directly, it comes back with that's not allowed, or it comes back with a different error message and things along those lines. jQuery, on the other hand, allows you to extend that object. Okay, I may not have explained that quite right, but so what we're doing here is we're saying jQuery.extend, parsing some JSON, that sort of thing, extending the prototype of pretty much anything with this, and saying add this variable named devMode with a value of true. So if we do off the base object .devMode, it returns true. So the kicker with that is that now we can check any object, class, or function for .devMode, and it'll return true by default. So what does this mean? So let's go with our worst case scenario. Say we somehow able to interrupt the interaction in the Node.js application because these things also use JavaScript, or we somehow get XSS that runs on the JavaScript application and then runs on the clients on the server side. We could, in theory, append a variable called isAdmin to the base object, and say what the software engineer in this particular case made the unfortunate mistake of just checking to see if isAdmin is true. And if they say they create a user account and they only append the variable isAdmin if the person is an administrator. So what we've done here is we've appended .isAdmin to every single object and by that, again, that's every function, class, everything in existence in JavaScript of is_admin by default to true to everything. So if your Node.js is going along and then it hits this, hey, is my user the admin? That'll now trigger true for every single thing that is compared there. Even Joe Bloggs, who's just signed up for an account and hasn't even finished their free trial, is now an admin as far as the application is concerned. To bear in mind, it only runs in the current context. What that means is that if you restart the JavaScript application, assuming this isn't reloading all of the stuff that's just saved from a database somewhere or a config file somewhere, this is no longer true. This only affects the current running context of the JavaScript application. This includes web pages. So if we did modify something on a web page, it would only affect the current context of that. So if you refresh the page, it's not going to do that. But to assist with the is_admin, so everything gets is_admin. Yeah? Cool. Why this works. Like we said, JavaScript is a dynamic language. It's also an object-based language, and it's a derived language. Everything extends down from something else. So it's objects all the way down, derived from object, derived from object, derived from object. You can technically show a giant tree diagram of JavaScript, and everything relates back to something somewhere. It just keeps going back further and further and further. So now we're going to take a look at the worst possible case scenario with a POC. So before we go into this, I do have some rough install instructions. These will be shown on the screen. Basically, we're having to, in this particular bug to work, we're using an old version of Node.js because we're using an old version of Ghost CMS. There's some particular things you need to do to get it up and running. Cool. And what we're going to try to do today is pop calc on my local machine, because everyone likes that sort of thing. So what we'll do is we'll bring up onto your Firefox here. Here we have Ghost CMS running. It runs normally, and we'll go around. We can jump around, look at a bunch of different things. What we're going to do is we're going to send across a nice little payload to the password reset system. What this does is this affects an empty comment section that they use underneath templating and appends to the prototype of that particular object, because that gets called every time the home page is loaded. And we're then going to mess with the constructor so that every time one of these empty comments is loaded up, the constructor is called, and we're overriding that with some additional information. And because we're affecting the proto of this, we're affecting every single empty comment that ever gets loaded from here on to the future. So here, we're telling it to call a child process. In this case, we're going to pop calc. And then because I don't want this thing popping calc every time the page reloads, I've also appended this little section here, which basically goes through and deletes all the object prototypes that we're appending in this particular case. So we run that. It doesn't look like it did anything. However, if we jump back across to hack test here, I'm just going to refresh the page, and calc popped. That's running on the server. And if I restart the node service in this particular case, this code is gone. If I deleted that eval thing, again, the code is gone. The thing to bear in mind, though, is this executes the next time it's run as far as this particular thing goes. So if I removed this out of it and run it again, we don't get back anything because we're telling you to try and load a fake user of some sort with a token and empty passwords and stuff like that. It doesn't even have to be a real user in this case. But every time I call this page, it opens another calculator. You can see why this might be a little bad and why I don't like it running this locally on this machine, knowing that some of my colleagues might have gotten to me when I was doing this as original lunch and learn. So as we said, so what's happening here is that jQuery.extends is taking the original put request of saying through to change the password to append attributes to an existing object and then adding extra parameters. And because it's still running all within the same context, it's storing those parameters and keeping them attached to it. So once again, what we got there is we're telling it that in the blue section of the text, we're telling it to start up a new child process called kcalc, and then we're telling it to delete all the prototyping stuff because you don't leave any tracks for what we're doing. That's a worst case scenario. Most of the time, you're not going to, in theory, you're not going to run into this sort of thing in the wild. How do you defend against this? Well, first of all, my personal opinion is JavaScript should not be used for anything. But if you do, let some pen testers at it. We might be able to mitigate some of the issues of you using JavaScript in the first place. If you update jQuery to anything after 3.3, .extends no longer exists. However, because of the way JavaScript actually is, you still have the issue that you can overwrite anything. You can still append things to this _ proto and that sort of thing. So it is possible to do this sort of attack without .extends in jQuery. It's just a little harder to do because you may not know the underlying, which objects and stuff are being called and underlying sort of thing. So it's going to take you a bit more research time to put it all together. Otherwise, update to a new version of jQuery. If you can't, consider why using jQuery. As an example, one of the apps that I've been testing for the last week for a undisclosed company has 6 different versions of jQuery running for the site, ranging from 1.1.7 through to 2.4. So it's vulnerable to this. Yeah. Otherwise, you can also update to newer versions of Node.js. So Node.js, if in the worst case scenario, has new functions called object.freeze, and that prevents you from making any changes to the object. Unfortunately, you can do object.unfreeze if you're a malicious entity, and that unfreezes the object and allows you to make changes to the object. Other different languages, such as the stuff running other slight modifications to Node.js, such as the ones that you use to be running Slack and such, or Discord, have other things that are built into them to try and protect against this. But again, because you've got access to the underlying code anyway, you can turn off the security features and then just run whatever you want after it. Yeah. I did pull some of this research from these 3 different places. So Sync.io has a wonderful blog post on how most of this stuff works. HackerOne was the original report for the CVE. And then there's also this wonderful PDF file just here as far as the prototype pollution was concerned. So this is based on some research from these 3 guys, 3 different teams in this particular case, to put it all together and get it running correctly. Yeah, that's me. Thanks. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, and I'll attempt to answer them as best I possibly can. But otherwise, yeah, have a good evening.
Thanks, Kelso. That was pretty cool. I guess I had a question as it relates to the setup of this environment. How are you going to give out some instructions and things like that for people to follow along with at home?
Sure. I'm happy to dump these slides to PDF and that sort of thing, because it's got some instructions on how to actually go ahead and create the small environment that I did this with, which is links to where to pull the downloads from, that sort of stuff. Just give me a day or 2 to get that approved by like corporate overlords, as it were. They're usually fairly okay with this sort of thing.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Was there any other questions in the chat? Cool. Well, thanks, Kelso. That was a really interesting talk, man, and good work for popping calc. It's always good to see. It's too bad it's KCalc, but you know. Well,
in theory, with that, you can, if it's running on a Windows system, rather than KCalc, you just tell it to run calc instead, and it'll do it.
Yeah, fantastic. That's cool. All right. So thanks very much for that, mate, and thanks again, FML. Really appreciate you both speaking. Look, so this stream has been a bit of a whirlwind, especially for me. I've never streamed before, but this is probably obvious. But so thanks heaps for coming on, gents. I really appreciate it. And behind the scenes, I'd like to also special shout out to Hoodie and Security Meta. Appreciate you guys' assistance over the last few days as we sort of scramble to get all of this up and running. Obviously, it's yeah, not ideal situation outside at the moment. So yeah, try and keep isolated and stay away from people, right? Like segregation, and don't do crimes. That's all from me. So any other questions, just jump on the Meetup or shoot us an email, melbourne@sectalks.org. Thanks all. Have a great night.